This weather is getting really intense. We have a dynamic storm system that went across areas of Oklahoma into Texas in the overnight hours, brought extensive wind damage. Some of those wind gusts were approaching 80 miles an hour in Oklahoma and Texas. And we also had several tornado warnings, including some possible sped up tornadoes. Now that system has moved off into East Texas, getting into Louisiana, as well as into Arkansas. We've got the low pressure that's forming on the cold side of the storm back into Kansas. They've actually got blizzard warnings unfolding into areas of Nebraska. Heavy snows will swing on the northwest side of Iowa back into Minnesota, getting into Wisconsin, and eventually heading into portions of Michigan with some snow coming in on the backside. So right now we've got numerous power outages with that system that brought all the extensive wind damage across Texas. In fact, we have upwards to 400,000 customers currently without power. And even though the storm has moved out, there will be extensive winds coming on the backside. So we've got wind advisories and high wind warnings headed into this afternoon, because we could still see some 50 to 60 miles per hour winds back into the southern plains. And that is just the start of things to come. I mean, look at this map, folks. That is some serious wind across a good part of the southern and central and southeastern areas. All those areas in brown, that is a wind advisory, a high wind warning, or watches. That's at least 40, 50, 60 mile per hour winds over a lot of states across the middle part of the country. And of course, just to the north side of that, on the colder side, that orange, that is your blizzard warning, is going to be unfolding across areas of Nebraska, back into Iowa. And then the heavier snows will extend into South Dakota and back into essentially into Minnesota and getting into Michigan later on this afternoon. But the dynamic storm system still has the tornado watch unfolding across portions of East Texas. That will only get extended, and these storms are expected to intensify and unfortunately become a serious tornado risk later on this afternoon across the southeast. But wow, it is really going to be windy. And let me look at some of these winds just over the next 48 hours, how it encompasses multiple states. I mean, easily like 20 or so states across a good part of the country as this dynamic storm system, 40, 60, 70, upwards to 80 miles an hour. I can't even roll out even some 90 mile per hour wind gust. And that's even outside of some of these severe storms. So right now we do have that elevated enhanced risk for all three modes of severe weather. And it's mainly, again, a damaging wind threat and unfortunately a tornado threat. So we do have the hatched risk. That's implying some of these winds could be approaching 65 miles an hour or even greater back into the Little Rock area, coming out of Dallas, back into the Shreveport vicinity, getting into Jackson, further south. I would likely see this maybe even extended even further south. That will include portions of Lake Charles, getting into New Orleans. That will swing into Mobile, back into Montgomery, as well as into Birmingham later on tonight. But we do have a serious tornado risk later on this afternoon as well for these same areas, but especially into northern areas of Louisiana. That includes the Shreveport area back into New Orleans. They did in fact cancel some of the Mardi Gras Fat Tuesday festivities down there because of all the dangerous weather that's approaching later on this afternoon into the evening, getting into Jackson as well as into Mobile with those significant probabilities of tornadoes. We're talking the EF2 type variety tornadoes, and that just extends into Montgomery. Even portions of Atlanta will likely get in the action going into the evening time frame. But right now we've got extensive helicity tracks. This is why we have the tornado watch that was unfolding across Dallas and areas of Oklahoma City. That continues to push off into the east for areas of East Texas, Louisiana, back into Mississippi, getting into Alabama. And there's another pocket of energy that will likely turn severe again with an upgraded enhanced risk for the East Coast. That includes the Carolinas, those areas across Virginia. So currently right now, as we swing into this afternoon, we've got the cold side of the storm. There's the tight isobars, no question. There's going to be extensive winds, a lot of considerable wind damage throughout multiple states across this powerful storm system, down to a 982 millibar low pressure. There's the warning warm sector with the leading edge and the squall line that will produce the extensive damaging winds, the straight line wind, and the spin up tornadoes. And some of these could be even some larger tornadoes, possibly even some long track tornadoes further south into the Dixie Alley area, but further northwest, you're in the cold side of the system and the snowy side of the system. That's why we have those blizzard warnings for easily winds of 35 plus for an extended period of time, easily meeting criteria of blizzard-like conditions into Nebraska, as well as into portions of Iowa, as well as getting into Minnesota. But it just continues for tomorrow. So we do have that elevated, upgraded, enhanced risk for all those areas across the East Coast. Includes areas of Charleston, back into Columbia, getting into the Wilmington region, back into Raleigh. All those areas need to be on high alert, especially heading into tomorrow afternoon. Again, with the same dynamic systems will be over your area by then along the East Coast. But there's a cold side of the system too, and it is dragging down some of that colder air aloft. And with the higher winds continue to be elevated, those wind chills could drop pretty significantly, you know, for March standards. So we had the Pacific front that came through, and now the storms is dragging down some of that colder air aloft. So you're going to feel it, kind of a winter chill, if you will. These are wind chills as we head into tomorrow morning on Wednesday, down to single digits across the middle part of the country. Teens back into Kansas, getting into the 20s in Oklahoma, even feeling like freezing further south. So you can see where the warm sector is, and you can definitely see where the colder side of the storm is. And that will continue to spin up and still continue to intensify heading into Wednesday afternoon. Now we're talking a 981 low pressure, with more or less the entire state of Iowa being clocked with heavy snows. That will extend in Wisconsin, getting into portions of Illinois, while this storm systems are draped across the East Coast with that heavier rain and some tornadic spin up tornadoes and that damaging wind aspect of the storm threat as well. And that continues to race off. One of the things about this system, it's moving quick. I mean, we saw storms moving at 65 miles an hour this morning. It's going to move every bit of that as it moves across the country from west to east, and will produce some extensive wind damage in its path. So as fast as this moves out heading into Thursday afternoon and we get a little bit of the wraparound on the backside, we'll have another storm system coming in. So this is your snowiest time of the year, back into the Four Corners regions, getting into Wyoming as well as into Colorado there. So expect numerous of these systems going into the month of March. And yes, we'll have another dynamic system with another trough that will be diving into the desert Southwest. That will cause the air to lift again, but this time it's going to be dragging down even colder air on your Saturday for this upcoming weekend. And one of the things that's pretty significant is we're going to be seeing even some southern plains snowfall again. So yeah, we could be talking about some afternoon snow showers within New Mexico, those areas across the Texas Panhandle, as those temperatures drop pretty significantly, with the chilly rain moving in for the second week of March, as the cold air will continue to dive a little bit further south. And what's significant is the chillier air and some of the snow still talking about in the Texas Panhandle, but especially there in the Santa Fe region just north of there, could be picking up some pretty decent amounts. And some of that heavier rains will likely extend back into areas of Louisiana and portions of Mississippi. But what's going to be significant and some of the changes that's evolved over the last couple of days, as we're starting to get a little bit of a colder look, right? This is your NAO, your North Atlantic Oscillation. Obviously, we started the month of March on the warmer side. That's why we're seeing some of that severe weather, cold air is coming in from the northwest on the backside. But once that cold front comes in on Saturday, this is changing. So as you know, we're getting some more confirmation that some of the teleconnections are starting to trend negative, implying that, you know, we could be looking at a little bit of a blocking pattern trying to set up, with the NAO continuing to drop negative and actually remain in negative for the second week of March, and even heading into the middle part of March. And if you look at the extended view on the 500 millibar, you can actually see the ridge starting to build up there into Greenland. That's significant of the blocking feature that's likely trying to unfold, and some colder air getting trapped underneath. If that's starting to come to fruition, we could be looking at some a little bit colder temperatures, especially as we head into the weekend and extending into that second week of March. So guys, I appreciate you guys watching. Do like this video, definitely hit the subscribe button, and catch my next update, why I protect you before and after the storm.